You know, this came about because of the ambiguity about the Ecuadorian laws. And I guess what we've learned here today, that the Ecuadorian laws are ambiguous. And that where they aren't, it's TBD, because there's a lot of things in progress. I think the asset declaration is maybe the biggest issue here. And if I understand this correctly, if an individual doesn't have $200,000 or a married couple doesn't have $400,000 of assets in Ecuador at their assessed value, then they don't need to make a declaration. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So that eliminates a lot of people. So I'm going to turn it over to questions now.
Is that foreign assets included?
Oh, that's another big question. Are foreign assets included?
Yeah, that's probably the most popular question these days, because also Ecuadorians, a good numbers of Ecuadorians, they have accounts outside of Ecuador and all of that. And the law does not mention, they don't use the word assets outside of the country. The law just says assets. So if it's because it's a general issue, it could be accepted as that you need to, once you decide to declare, you will have to declare everything, even international assets.
Nobody in their right mind would do that.
Yeah, nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. Even the people that have filed the declaration, they are just declaring on the assets here in Ecuador. And that's the people that are being notified. Because for some people it will be impossible to say I have less than 400,000. So they are declaring that, but they are not declaring outside. Unless they know that, for example, for business purposes, let's say you have a business, and in your business you have an account that is outside of Ecuador, then it's not a good,
Only that account.
then you declare that account. But it's not 100% sure that you have to declare. I will say, once you declare, the IRS can request that you also include your assets abroad Ecuador. Yeah.
Question. Thank you so much for your presentation. Very, very helpful. I have a question about the land use requirements. I know it's still flexible, but if one is interested in buying a piece of land and letting it sit as a virgin forest to preserve it, is there a problem with that? I mean, with the commercial activity, can you say, hey, the activity is that it's a virgin forest and it's producing oxygen and a place, a home for animals? Is that possible without a commercial activity?
Well, it's a very good question. You have the possibility in some areas that will be the only alternative you will have, because it's already been declared, as a preserved area. So if you want to buy, you have to preserve it as it is, and then you will have no problem. If it's 1,000 hectares, if it's a preserved area, you will need to hold it like that. You will have no problem. We have, as an example, we have a client that is developing in Cotacachi a very nice development, and what they did is they accomplished the development to the requirements of the protected area. And they have a huge protected area and also lots that are selling. And but yeah, they have accomplished that to what's the preserved area thing. Now, it's not that difficult. It's challenging, but it's not that difficult to get an area, called preserved area. We will have to show some specific information and to have studies and technically things that will help determine that that's a preserved area, and for sure that will help you keep it as it is. if your neighbors already are agricultural people that are doing agricultural activity, it's possible in the near future that you have to face the circumstance that you have to do agricultural activity, especially if it's going to be a long extension of land. Yes.
If you incorporate for will purposes, will that have any consequences on road numbers and other things like that?
When you incorporate, you will get a RUC number will be for the company. I don't know if your question is related if the company will be the owner of the assets.
My question is, if one incorporate for will purposes, you want to distribute your will out to your spouse, for instance.
Okay.
Then you said previously, if I understood well, that you could incorporate to go around that 25% law?
Yes, you can do that. You can
So
do it.
if you do that, will that have any consequences on your declaration of assets?
Not necessarily. No, let's see an example. For example, let's say you incorporate and you are the owner of the shares of that company. Then again, in Ecuador, if you are the owner of that shares, your wife will be 50% owner of that shares too. So it's, and then if you have more than $400,000 in shares, in theory, you will have to declare.
But a foreign corporation can be the owner of the property in Ecuador.
A foreign corporation can be the owner, yes. Yes.
If you want your spouse to inherit and not your children to inherit the property you have in Ecuador, I was told there's some form you file so that if you die in Ecuador, your spouse inherits everything you have here and your children don't. What is that form?
Well, let's see, as a general principle, your spouse will already be 50% owner of any asset that you have, okay? So you have that 50% already covered. Then you can use 25% of the remaining part for your spouse. So that will make it 75 for your spouse. Then the part that will be a tricky part will be that 25%, which will have to be in favor, the 25% of your part. That 25%, it's the one that could probably be addressed by any of your descendants and says that part is mine, even though that you did any thing that was, a form or a will or whatever you did could be challenged, but your descendant that says, I own and I am descendant and therefore I have the right for at least 25% of this.
Can't they also do a private document that goes around the will process?
Well, but it could be declared null.
I know, it could be attacked, but a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, but there's plenty of documents you can do. One thing that could work well, but there are several things. As the gentleman there over there says, if you have a foreign company, that could be the owner. A foreign trust could be the owner, and then you arrange as you want outside how you want that property to be determined. That will be like the more practical alternative. But if you want to talk about documents that can get away from that circumstance, probably one way to do it is when you purchase that you have the deed of purchase mention the right of survival. That could be an alternative.
What is that?
Right of survival is that you mentioned that when you are not, when one of the spouses die, the other one will survive and will be the owner of the remaining part of the property.